Hey, good morning, everyone. Hey, would you give me a big hand clap? Hey, this is a good morning. I'm certainly glad you're here. Many of you know that today we're starting a 6-week series on my book, Living Above Average. And hopefully you got a copy and you've been looking at it and sharing it with friends and family. And I've had a number of people say, Jeff, why did you write a book called Living Above Average? Well, actually, next month, I will have spent 40 years in full-time work with people. And, being 45, I started at a young age. But in the 40 years that I've been working with people, here's my concept, here's my thought. I believe there are 7 key areas of life: spiritual, physical, mental, emotional, relational, financial, and occupational. And that's been my view about human beings on their earthly journey. And I found that in one or more or maybe many of those areas, people get stuck. It might be a circumstance, a heartache, a trauma, the way they're thinking, whatever it might be, or just life happens. And they get stuck spiritually or physically or mentally or emotionally or relationally or financially or occupationally. And when they get stuck, they're living simply an average life. And I believe the God of creation, who we talked about just a moment ago, who they found a planet 264 trillion miles away from the earth, that God is anything but an average God. And we were created in His image. So when we get stuck in one or more areas of those areas of our life, we need some help. How many of you have ever been stuck? It might be in the snow. Hey, it's snowing today. Or in the mud. And you're trying to rock it back and forth, and sometimes you're gunning it, and especially in the mud. You know what you do when you push your foot on the accelerator when you're in the mud to try to get out? You dig yourself deeper. And I found that in 40 years with working with people and being stuck in any or one of these areas of life, they try to gun it. They're trying to work themselves out of it. I'm just going to do harder. I'm going to make it happen. And many times what they do is they spin the wheels of their life and they get deeper. What they need is some way to get out, some way to leverage the opportunity to move beyond that stuck position. And part of the reason that I'm on the planet is I want to help people get unstuck. I don't want them to live an average life. I want them to excel spiritually and physically and mentally, and emotionally, and relationally, and financially, and occupationally. And that's why I wrote a book, Living Above Average. And so today I'm going to kind of let you in on the story, the journey, how we came to this place for me to write a book. And I think you'll see in a moment when I get to it that all of these 10 ideas or principles can be applicable to you. They're not just to me, they're to every human being who desires to get unstuck and live above average. And so we're going to start our journey, our 6-week series on living above average, and I'm going to ask you to pray with me. God, we thank you and we love you and we appreciate that you created in us in your image to live above average. Lord, there's not a man or a woman in here today who doesn't have potential that still is untapped and undeveloped. No matter what their age is, God, there's still more to be discovered. There's still more on their journey. There's still more on the adventure of life. And Lord, in all of those 7 key areas of life, they can still excel to live above average. So teach us today, God, so that we can make the most of our lives. In Jesus' name, amen. The gift of life is an adventure. How many of you believe that? I have 3 people out there raising their hand. Let me say it again. The gift of life is an adventure. But I think we need to put some definition to the word adventure. I looked it up in several different dictionaries, and here's what I found. An exciting experience. Bold, usually risky event. Did you hear that? Bold but a risky event. An undertaking involving risk and danger. The exploration of unknown territory. Now, I looked in several definitions and dictionaries, and there was some key and common words that were used. Exciting, danger, risk, unknown, potential hazard. So when we think of adventure, it's not, I don't think I saw anywhere in that definition where words were used like safe, comfortable, easy, controllable, with total assurance. So I'm going to come back and say that again. Life, the gift of life, is an adventure. And by definition, that means we're living on the edge. We're living in a place of danger and risk and potential challenges. If we fail to see life as an adventure, we can miss God's best for our life. Can I say that again? If we fail to live life as an adventure, we can miss God's best for our life. And the reason for that is because I think most human beings don't like to take risks. Especially when we get older and we get more mature. We like to control our environment, our situations, our opportunities, and people so that we can play it safe. You know, the Bible says the just or the Christian shall live by faith. The Christian or the person will live on the edge of adventure. And you know what oftentimes we say as human beings? No thanks. I'll stay in my comfort zone. I'll play it safe. I'll stay in control. I think that's just true of all of us. As we grow older, we can succumb to average. Just living an average life. If and when we live average, we derail that adventure. Instead of living on the edge of new opportunities and new miracles and new potential, we say, no, here's my comfort zone. Here's the things that I can control. And so we succumb to average. And if we weren't created to be average, and if our life is not to be average, then when we fall prey to average, we're missing out on all that God has. Many times people, as they get older, they simply participate in their well-organized, well-established routines. Get up, live my life just like this, day in and day out, same thing. Even in church, it's just kind of the same old thing. We don't really step out of the boat. We don't really live beyond our comfort zone. It's just these well-established routines. And as we live an adventurous life, we live on the edge. We're waiting for new opportunities. We're looking for new miracles. We're seeking new potentials that are in our lives. Living above average is to embrace the adventure till our very last breath on planet Earth. You know, as Christians, we vowed to love and to seek and to serve and to follow a God that's anything but average. The God of the universe who created that planet 234 trillion miles away from Earth can do the unbelievable, can do the impossible. He has no limits. He's divine. He is miracle in and of himself. He's anything but average. And you and I have a relationship with him. He created us in his image. So to live an average life is to say, God, you're not as big as you really are. On the adventure of life, we need to learn many lessons, don't we? And you never stop learning. And I want to share with you today the story of my journey of writing a book called Living Above Average. I have to admit to you that I'm getting ready to turn 60 here in just a month or two. I lied to you earlier, but sometimes that happens. But I've set out some goals for my 60s. And what I began to find late in my 50s was the temptation for average was becoming strong and powerful. I just got tired. I had some health conditions. I began to stop dreaming. I just began to fall prey to those routines. And I began to believe that maybe my best days were behind me when I was younger and healthier and more energetic and willing to do this and that and get up really early and stay up really late. And so this temptation for average became strong and powerful in my life. And if you know me, and several of you do very, very well over a long period of time, I don't do very good with average. I don't do very good with survival. I don't do very good with maintenance. I need another challenge. I need another mountain to climb. I need another goal to achieve. I need another opportunity to seize. I need another life that I can touch and encourage and impact and make their life better. That's what I need. And so that was the foundation that launched this whole idea of writing a book, Living Above Average. Today I want to share with you 10 life lessons that I learned on this journey so far. And again, you don't have to write a book for these to be applicable. And I want you to maybe listen carefully and let it be applied to your life in some significant way. Maybe it's one of these tips, maybe it's 2, maybe it's 5, maybe it's all 10 of them. It's kind of like in my book, 50 life coaching tips. I know that not all 50 are going to be applicable to all of you in here. It might just be one, and I've told you some stories, and I'll continue to tell you stories. The book's been out about a month and a half, and I probably have 12, 15 or more testimonies of people that have called me or have emailed me or written me or have had a cup of coffee with me and told me how one of those tips, they didn't say the whole book, one of those tips. So today it might be 1 or 2 or 5 of these tips that are applicable to you, because if you're caught in average, I want you to know there's more to your life. There's more opportunities, there's more potential, there's more miracles that are before you. And it doesn't matter what your age is. You may be one moment away, one day away, one step away, one opportunity away from something that's going to change your life. And as we get older, we stop believing that. And I want to encourage you, you can still live above average, spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, financially, and occupationally. All right? So let's take 10 life lessons I've learned so far in this whole journey of writing my very first book. And they always say the first book is the hardest. And it's true. And it made me think of the first time I preached a message 40 years ago, and I went back and listened to it. I hope I've improved. I hope I've grown. One of my goals in the 60s is I'm going to write one book every year. So by the age of 70, I'll have 10 more books written. They may be in this regard or other regards. I got a lot of ideas. And I want to tell you, the vision is by the time I'm 70, I hope that we, you and me, and we have created a living above average movement that touches our country. I've traveled around the world. I have visions of it happening in different parts of Africa, in Europe, in Asia. Gosh, has he kind of lost it a little bit? This getting closer to being 60's done something to him. Yes! It's inspired me that I'm living on planet Earth for a reason and a purpose, and you are too, and I'm not going to succumb to average, and I'm going to believe about the miracles, and I want to impact and change the world, and I want you to also. So here's 10 life lessons that I've learned, and maybe they'll help you too. Number 1, using my gifts and my passion. I believe all of us were created in our mother's womb with a God-given purpose. And in that purpose, God sovereignly gave you gifts. They're His gifts, but He gave them to you. And to you, not only gifts, but talents and abilities that have come forth, and they're unique to you, and they need to be developed. He's created a great world, 7 billion people on planet Earth who've been created unique by Almighty God with unique gifts and talents. And it's our responsibility to recognize them, to develop them, and then to deploy them. Because when that happens, we change the world for good. How many of you want to change the world for good? I do. I don't want to simply live this life and be selfish and let it be all about me and then die and stand before God. And He said, you're one of those most selfish individuals that ever were. I want Him to say, hey, you understood I created you. I gave you gifts. I gave you talents, and you used them to help and encourage other people to live a better life. And now you get to meet me, and God says, well done. That's what my life is about. That's what all of our lives should be around. So God created me with a purpose, and so He gave me gifts, talents, and abilities. Until my very last breath, I want to continue to use and deploy those gifts. I think some of you who've known me a long time would probably agree. Here's some of the gifts that God gave me. To pastor, to shepherd, to care, to be a leader, to be an encourager, to preach. For some reason, He gave me lots of passion. I got lots of passion. And you know what? A lot of people just don't know how to handle my passion. But you know what? God gave it to me. And I'm responsible even if you don't like it. Even if you reject it. Now, I don't want to say it's all about me and so I can use it any old way and hurt you. I'm just saying, and you know, I always said it's crazy. How many of you like college football or college basketball? We're in college football season. Have you ever watched a coach or a player? They got lots of passion. And they can go crazy and nuts and jump up and bump and high five and hit each other's head. Or they're mad and they're yelling and screaming, hitting each other's head. But in church, we are now before a holy God. Monotone. Don't move. Don't get too excited. The God who created a planet 264 trillion miles away, who sent His Son to die on a cross so that we could be freed from average. It ain't going to happen with me, folks. I'm excited about that. Our gifts do not belong to us. Our gifts belong to Him. And so one of these things in writing the book is I needed to use the gifts and the talents and the vision and the passion that He gave me to create something. And that was not just for Jeff Crabtree, it's for every one of you out there. To discover what your gift is, develop it, and employ it so that you can make it available to other people. Number 2, stepping beyond my comfort zone. As human beings, we love comfort, don't we? I like the things that make me feel good. And so I'm going to try to control my life so I can surround myself with people and circumstances and situations that make me feel good. And so I'm safe in the cocoon. And I'm not going to live on the edge, and I'm not going to risk, and I'm not going to take those dangerous opportunities to discover something beyond my own comfort zone. You know, there's something dangerous about comfort zones, and I hope, again, in my book will help you, for you to recognize your comfort zones, because if you don't recognize them, they'll hold you captive. Comfort zones begin to influence the way that you think and the way you process, the decisions that you make. And then you know what your comfort zones do? They result in average. Spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, financially, occupationally. They'll hold you prison to your own comfort. And that's a danger. And so I thought when I asked you or made the statement that the gift of life is an adventure, words like safety and comfortability were not used. What? Danger, risk, hazard, unknown. And if you're not living on the edge, you're going to live an average life. Why in the world, when we've received a gift of life from Almighty God, would we succumb to average when we can live above average? We serve a God who's definitely above average. How many of you know that I know I'm not a writer? God gifted me to talk. Talk, 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 talk is my mantra. If you don't believe me, ask my wife. If you don't believe me, ask my kids. If you don't believe me, ask my dog. Even when nobody's around, I'm talking. Talk, talk, talk. I don't write. I don't write. If you're going to live above average, you're going to have to understand what your comfort zone is, and you're going to have to step beyond your comfort zone. You're going to have to get out of the boat, and you're going to have to do things that are risky and that you don't think you could ever do. I'm not sure anybody who's ever known me would have ever said, that guy's destined to write a book. They'd say, he's destined to talk and talk and talk and talk. My friend, if you want to live above average, you're going to have to risk to get outside of your comfort zone in something that you do not feel comfortable with and you don't feel that you can do. Spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, financially, occupationally. Number 3, the process, my friends, of living above average, getting beyond safety and comfort zone is step by step by step. How many of you have ever heard the old thing that every journey starts with a first step? The problem is sometimes we're afraid to take the first step because we like our comfort zone, because we like being in the boat, because we like feeling comfortable. So to do something that will cause you to live above average, you have to step out of the boat. You got to step beyond yourself. It's a life coaching tip. Every step beyond your norm and your comfort zone is a success. We think success, let me use a baseball illustration. We think success is hitting a home run. Well, it is for some, but you know what success is for some? Getting up to bat. Because you know what? A lot of people like being on the team, but they stay in the dugout. They love being cheerleaders. Because you know what? They don't want a 100-mile-an-hour fastball coming at them. So for them, shaking with the bat, getting up there is success. Step by step by step. What I found, I started my coaching work, and I don't have time today to tell you, about 12 or 13 years ago, I was going to get out of full-time ministry, and I was creating a ministry to pastor pastors around the country and around the world, and so I needed some way to create some sense of income beyond my loss of income, so I got into the coaching world. I grew up in a very athletic home. My dad was a college athlete. My brother was a professional athlete, now has been a college coach for 40 years, so I grew up around sports. I grew up around coaching. Well, I loved life. I loved people. I wanted to help people. And so I learned about the whole coaching world years ago, and so I started a life coaching business. And so I began to start life coaching people one-on-one, and as I began to do that, obviously there's a learning curve, stepping out of my comfort zone, stepping out of the boat. And pretty soon people would contact me and say, hey, that tip really helped me, or that tip really helped me. Or some people began to say, well, if it helped me, maybe it would help some other people. It was a solution to people's problem. If you've read my book, there's nothing here here that's crazy, wild, outlandish. It's taking us back to the basics. You ask any coach, athletic coach, when a player or a team begins to lose or begin to struggle, it's because they usually go away from the basics. They're not doing the basics regularly, consistently, and that's what happens in life. And so these are 50 life coaching tips to take us back there, a step at a time. I want you to know this. I'm a big believer in goal setting, but I want you to know that I never set out a goal to write a book. I'm still amazed that it even happened. What I did is as I was coaching people, and these life coaching tips were coming, and right now I have about 1,350 life coaching tips. So I feel like I can kind of go into almost any setting with anybody, and I've got a lot of tools in the toolbox. But what I began to do when they began to share with me how these were helping, I just sat down to my computer and began to think about it a little and write out why it was important and began to build on it and unpack it and expand it and develop it. So it wasn't to be a book. It was just me kind of using these tips and expanding them. So I would write, I'd stop, I would review. I'd write, I'd stop, I would review. I'd write, I'd stop, and I would review. And it was step by step by step. Again, if you're going to live above average, you're going to have to get beyond the comfort zone. You're going to have to take a first step, but then you keep taking more steps. And then pretty soon I saw the goal. I've been writing these different tips and expanding them, and pretty soon people were saying, well, why don't you get it broader instead of doing one-on-one? Why don't you do seminars? Why don't you do workshops? Why don't you write a book? What? I never set out to write a book. And then pretty soon I could see it. And then I could see the goal. I could see the end of that. So I kept taking more steps that way. I went from encouragement to discouragement. I went from up to down. I went from confident to deeply insecure. I went from excitement to feeling stuck. But I kept taking step after step after step after step after step after step to get the final product. All of these are for you. You know that, don't you? Number 4, the battle with distractions. How many of you believe we live in a world of distractions? Man, my whole journey in writing this book was a constant, intense battle with distractions. First, externally, time, the activities I had, the responsibilities I had, the interests I had, the hobbies I have. I like playing golf. The needs that came up, there were distractions. So it was very hard to even work on this because I got distracted externally. I got distracted internally. I felt insecure. I'm not a writer. I felt inferior. I kept asking, why in the world would I write a book? Why would anybody want to read a book that I would write? I began to feel fearful about what it would be like if I wrote a book and nobody bought it, nobody read it except my mom. My wife wouldn't even buy it, and it was free. I began to feel, this is foolish. I'm not a writer. Just stop it. Give up. Anytime you're going to step beyond your comfort zone and move beyond living an average life, you're going to be bombarded with all kinds of distractions constantly. And that brings me to the 5th point. Don't give up, give in, or throw in the towel. Again, when you step beyond your comfort zone, you get out of the boat, you risk beyond what is average. You'll probably have this consistent nagging thought like I did, give up. It takes too much risk, too much time, too much effort, too much money. Your reputation's on the line. No way. Just throw in the towel. Maybe you're not different, and might not just be a book for you. But when you jump outside of your comfort zone to live above average, not everybody's going to think it's a great thing. You're not going to get a lot of cheerleaders. My friends, next month I've been working with people for 40 years. I know about humanity. I know some will go, hey, I love it. I'm with you. It's making an impact. Some will look and go, what? What do you do that for? And I'll have some people that will read it and go, shh. And I'll have some people that will never buy it and say, that's crazy. The reality is, a lot of times you just want to throw in your towel and live an average life. Settle into what's comfortable, where there's no risk, there's no danger. You can just kind of create your own little comfortable world and live an average life and then die and realize that you had the opportunity to live above average. Number 6, overcoming obstacles and roadblocks. Man, there were so many of them. First of all, because, how many of you know I'm extremely organized? Thank God I married a woman that was organized. God had a plan in mind. I would start writing on these things, and then as a computer, and you know I'm a computer guru, genius, I would save it in a file, and then when I'd go back to it, I couldn't remember where I saved it. Oh, I'm the only one. So Kathy would say, what file did you save it in? And I said, I don't remember. In reaching a goal, living above average, I hit a roadblock. And then I got so keen on it that I learned what a thumb drive is. Some of you let me go, I don't know. It's something to do with your thumb? And so I'd save it on a thumb drive, and man, I got it. I'm going to change the world. We're going to create a living above average movement that's going to change the world because I have a thumb drive, and I know how to use it. But then I would misplace it, and I couldn't find it. That's an obstacle. That was trouble for me. And then I was moving and grooving. I would be writing. I'd get in the groove, and hey, I am a writer. And man, I'd get doing it like that. And my computer would freeze. And I would forget that I should have been backing it up and saving it as I was going. And then I lost it all. Obstacles, roadblocks. And then when it came to editing, I'd never edited a book. So I asked around, who knows an editor? Well, we found an editor. She had never edited a book. Okay, so you see what's coming. So all this work, and I give it to the editor, and she's a great young lady, and she knew that I was a preacher, so she said, hey, do I have some freedom to change some things? And, well, sure. By the time she changed it, it wasn't even me anymore. And I'd be honest, because I had said we wanted the book out last November so we could get ready to sell it for Christmas. And so I had this thing, should I just go ahead and let it be published? But it wasn't me anymore, and I was struggling. It was an obstacle. I was down. I was discouraged, and I didn't know what to do. And my wife and my kids gave me wise counsel. Jeff, it's your first book. You got to make sure you're happy with it. And so my wife then became the editor, which she's very good at that, but it was 8 months. See, she hadn't had it on her calendar. It was 8 months of back and forth and love and argument and love, and she was trying to organize me and edit it, and I was trying to roadblocks and hindrances, and then publishing it. When they came to publish it and in the editing, they said people don't read much anymore. Did you know that? And they don't like to read anything that's really long. So you got to make everything a page and a quarter, page and a half. Hey, I can't even do an introduction without 3 pages. So roadblock, hindrances. Then I found a publisher. And you don't know how many times we went back and forth and back and forth. My friends, when you get outside of your comfort zone, when you risk to be above average, You're going to face obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, hindrance after hindrance after hindrance, and you're just going to want to throw in the towel and stop. That's human nature. That's normal. Number 7, the need of a team. I had friends that would continue to encourage me, both clients of people I was working with and friends and family. Keep going and keep going and keep going. If you get out of the comfort zone, if you get out of the boat, if you're going to go for a dream way beyond your ability, you're going to need constant people to encourage you. Encouragement, encouragement, encouragement. I've got some good friends, Greg and Ellen Yancey. Maybe some of you know them. They have a beautiful house up in Granby. And so Greg would always say, why don't you go up for a couple of days? Go on Friday and Saturday before church and go up and get away and write. And so several times, maybe a couple of times a year, I'd go up to Granby and just have a house by myself to begin writing. That was part of the team. Obviously, I needed the editors. I needed the publishers. I needed the encouragement of my wife and my family. It's about interdependence, not independence. I had a guy call me the other day and said, hey, I read your book and I want to meet with you and have coffee. I'd only met him one other time, and yesterday I met him, and he was telling me his childhood, that his dad almost killed him when he was in the womb, and the long, long story. And the point being is he says, hey, I'd like to write that someday. I'd like to write a book. Yes, sir. I believe most all of us have a story. We all have a story. Most of us have a book inside of us. But for whatever reason, you haven't done it. You know, I told him, I said, write a book. Write a book. I'm going to love you. I'm going to follow you up. And as a coach, I'm going to keep challenging you. Write your book. Write your book. Write your book. I think he's going to need me in his life because he's gone through the whole thing. I don't know, and I don't know if I can, and I'm afraid, and all the stuff that comes. You need a team. 8, facing my feelings of inferiority and insecurity. Early in my life, maybe like many of you, participating in something that I wasn't maybe really good at or gifted in, I faced rejection. I faced embarrassment. I faced ridicule. Like many, comparison dominated much of my thinking and my feelings and my actions. Like all families, and we've talked about it, we were dysfunctional. My brother was an outstanding athlete, and I was always compared, and I never matched up. So the seed of insecurity, the seed of inferiority was strong in my life. What others thought of me became what I thought of myself. And you know what? Every human being has that curse. Some people just cover it up and mask it better, but every one of us have insecurity and inferiority. But it was prominent in my life. Still is today. When somebody reads my book or they inquire about my book, my thought is, oh, wow. Will they be one of the people that will think, that's silly, that's stupid? Those are so... Everybody knows those tips. It's a page and a quarter. He probably wrote that in about a month. They don't know the journey. My friends, when you get out of the boat, when you get out of your comfort zone, I want you to know that those feelings of insecurity and inferiority will probably become more prominent than ever before. But don't listen to them. Don't believe the lie. Don't let them hold you down or hold you back. Face them in the eye and have courage and say, insecurity and inferiority, I'm coming through. You are not going to dominate my life. That fear is not going to keep me in average. Number 9, keeping my why always in front of me and in focus. Why am I doing this? I'll share with you some. 1, again, I want to use my gifts. Number 2, I want to help other people on the earthly journey. 3, I want to step beyond my comfort zone. 4, I want to combat this temptation to live an average life. 5, I want to reach other people I can't normally reach. I've been a pastor for 40 years. When you wear that title and you wear that hat, you know, some people are already, they will not listen to you. I should show you some of the emails and some of the Facebook messages I've gotten already that are not positive. They've already coined me as a pastor. So now I'm no longer dedicated to Christ. I've backslidden from being a Christian pastor because it doesn't say God and Jesus in every word. The reality is I wanted to reach people who don't know Him. I want to reach everybody that's stuck spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, financially, and occupationally. And I don't want to wear a hat that keeps me from that. I want to tell you, since my books come out, I've had more contact with people who would never contact me in 2 months, and it has ignited me. Now, there's a long journey to get here, you know that, but I'm reaping some of the benefits. People are calling me. Will you sit down with me? Will you talk with me? Will you coach me? But under the title of pastor, they wouldn't have allowed me to have that opportunity. I want to leave a legacy for my kids. Number one, I realized that my 1,300 tips that I've got or more have all come from my time in reading the Bible or prayer or just what the Lord's teaching me in my life. I want my kids to have something written down. Hey, when I read that tip, I know something was going on between God and my dad. And I want them to have at least 1,300 tips when I'm dead and gone to go, hey, what was my dad learning in the journey of life so that he wouldn't succumb to average? I wanted to leave a legacy for them. And I wanted to be a help to others. This guy yesterday, he said, I want to write a book. Okay, I can kind of tell you about 10 steps that you're going to have to go through. Now I can be a resource. That's all I want to do with the life that God's given me is help everybody else live beyond average, to get out of the comfort zone, to get back into the adventure, to live on the edge, to look for a new opportunity, to seize a new miracle, to find and deploy their potential. And through all of this, I had to keep my whys in front of me. Why am I doing it? Last but not least, prayer, surrender, and trust. I'm not sure how God's going to use it. I want to tell you that I, again, have had more opportunities in 2 months to talk to people in unique coaching ways than I ever had before, and that really excites me. I don't know how God's going to use that. All I can do is pray, God, here it is. Here it is. I surrender whatever you want it to be, and then simply to trust. You know, I'll leave you with a scripture. It's in Acts 17:28. In Him, meaning in God, in Christ, we live and move and have all of our being. So, for a lot, the book won't mean anything. For some, it'll be okay. And for some, it'll change their life. I believe that. They'll read a tip at a right time in a right moment, and God will meet them, and that one little tip will help them take that first step to move beyond their comfort zone, to get out of the boat, and to live an above-average life. So today starts a 6-part series. I'm going to go over many of the coaching tips in the next several weeks. And as Charlie mentioned, if you miss a week, I encourage you to go back to the connections table, write your name, we'll get you a CD. If you don't have a book or you want to get one to give to a friend, family member, or a stranger, I've got the books today. Kathy's not here, so you'll have to come to me to get the book. They're cheaper here than they are on Amazon, $10 here. They're $13.95 plus shipping. So get them from me, $10. I want to tell you this last story. I'm going to have the band come back and we'll sing and close. I just got the book done. And Kathy and I were going to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho for a conference. And we're in line through security, and you know how fast that goes. And there was a guy behind me, and for whatever reason, he started engaging us in a conversation. And all of a sudden, I just sensed, I don't know this guy. I reached into my bag and I said, hey, I just want to give you a book. Now, as crazy as I am, I believe that was a divine opportunity. It has nothing to do with the content. It has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with, I think God wanted me to give him that book. And you know what? I believe someday in heaven, I'm going to meet him, maybe even before heaven, and he's going to call me. And he's going to say, can we talk? And I believe it's going to have impacted his life. But my friends, if you're going to live above average, it can start today. It can start today. Take these 10 tips. Don't throw it. You know, because it's not what we know, it's what we apply that makes the difference. So the bulletin or the book, don't just read it and then put it on the shelf or throw it away. Apply it and live above average. Right on? Have a good day.